Venezuela sits on more proven oil reserves than Saudi Arabia. Let that sink in for a second. More oil than Saudi Arabia, and its people are going hungry. Right now, families there are boiling water for hours just to stretch a bag of rice one more day. The currency in their pocket isn't worth the paper it's printed on. People have started weighing stacks of bills instead of counting them. And here's the part that should stop you cold. Now picture Switzerland. No oil, no coastline to ship crude out of. No diamond mines, no gold rush, nothing in the ground worth fighting over. And yet Switzerland sits near the top of the list of the richest countries on Earth per person. Year after year. That's the paradox. The resource should be the advantage. The data says otherwise again and again in country after country. This isn't bad luck. It's a pattern, and it's about to repeat itself with lithium, cobalt, and rare earth metals. In this video, you're going to see exactly how a barrel of oil can quietly rewire a government's incentives until it stops needing its own people. You'll see why Nigeria and Angola pulled in hundreds of billions of dollars and still can't keep the lights on. Why Norway struck oil too and turned it into one of the richest funds on the planet instead. And what all of this means for the next resource war already forming over lithium and cobalt. By the end, you'll know exactly what to watch for, because the same pattern is loading again right now. Act 1, the pattern. Nobody wants to admit is a pattern. Economists have a name for this. They call it the resource curse. Here's the plain English version. Countries sitting on a pile of natural wealth, oil, gas, diamonds, tend to grow slower and stay poorer than countries that have none of it. Not sometimes, every single time. And that's what turns this from a sad story into a pattern worth tracing. Look at the numbers. Venezuela's currency collapsed under inflation that hit over 1,000,000% in a single year, while sitting on the largest proven oil reserves on the planet. Nigeria has pulled hundreds of billions of dollars out of the ground in oil revenue since the 1970s, and still, roughly 4 in 10 Nigerians live below the poverty line. Angola pumped billions in oil profit through its state coffers for decades, and large parts of the country still don't have reliable roads, clean water, or a working power grid. Now put Japan next to that. Put South Korea, Switzerland, Singapore next to that. None of them have oil. None of them hit some rare mineral windfall either. So what's actually going on here? All 4 are wealthy, stable, and sit near the top of the list for income per person worldwide. So the easy explanations start falling apart fast. It's not colonialism because Nigeria and Angola were colonized, but so was South Korea, so was Singapore, and one path led to collapse while the other led to some of the strongest economies on Earth. It's not geography either, because Switzerland is landlocked, mountainous, and has almost no farmland to speak of. And it's definitely not a lack of money. Nigeria and Angola pulled in more raw cash from oil than most nations in history ever generated from any single industry. So if it's not history, not geography, and not a shortage of cash, what's left? The resource itself isn't the curse. What the resource does to a government's incentives, that's the curse. And here's why that matters. To see exactly how that works, you have to follow the money before it even comes out of the ground. Act 2, the mechanism, how oil money rewires a government. Here's where you have to follow the cash all the way to its source. In a normal economy, government money comes from taxes. And taxes come from millions of people going to work, running shops, starting businesses, buying and selling things every single day. That's a lot of separate transactions, a lot of separate people the government has to keep happy enough to keep working. Oil doesn't work that way. Oil revenue doesn't come from millions of citizens. It comes from a hole in the ground and a contract with a handful of drilling companies. The government owns the wells, or owns the rights to lease them out, and the money flows straight from the export terminal into the treasury. No factory floor, no small business, no 50 million taxpayers filing forms every spring. Think about what that actually does to a government's daily job. A country that funds itself through taxes needs its citizens to be productive because a broke, jobless population can't pay taxes, and a government with no tax revenue can't function. So that government is forced to care about jobs, schools, roads, whatever makes the economy grow, because its own survival depends on it. An oil government doesn't have that problem. It doesn't need its people employed. It doesn't need them literate, healthy, or even alive in any productive sense. It needs one oil field secured and one export terminal running. That's the whole business model. And when that's the whole business model, the government's relationship to its own citizens quietly breaks. This is no taxation without representation, except run backward. The original idea was simple. If a government is going to take your money, you get a say in how it's spent. Flip it around. If a government doesn't need your money at all, why would it need your say? Why would it need your vote, your protest, your opinion on anything? The accountability chain that normally runs from citizen to government snaps. And it snaps quietly, because nobody voted to break it. It just stops mattering. And once that chain snaps, corruption stops being a moral failure and starts being a design feature. Tax revenue in a healthy economy is spread across millions of tiny, boring transactions. A coffee shop here, a payroll there, almost impossible to funnel into one pocket. Oil revenue is the opposite. It's one pipeline, one state contract, one export deal, sitting in one place. Easy to redirect, easy to hide, easy to move into a small circle of hands. Nigeria and Angola show you exactly what that circle looks like in practice. Oil ministries and state oil companies become the machine, not for pulling oil out of the ground, but for pulling money out of the machine itself. Military contracts get inflated, export deals get routed through shell companies tied to the same handful of families. And while that circle gets richer, public hospitals run without supplies, and public schools run without teachers, because the money that should have reached them never left the circle in the first place. Here's the thing though, there's a second problem sitting underneath all of that, and economists gave it a name too, Dutch disease. Oil money floods into a country so fast that it drives the currency's value way up. That sounds good on paper. It's a disaster in practice, because a strong currency makes everything else that country sells abroad, coffee, textiles, manufactured goods, suddenly cost more on the world market. Buyers go elsewhere. Farms shut down. Factories shut down. And what's left standing is oil, because oil is the one product still worth exporting. So the verdict here isn't complicated, even if the mechanism took a while to walk through. Oil wealth doesn't build a diversified economy. It strangles every other industry on its way in, and it does it quietly enough that by the time anyone notices, oil is the only thing left in the room. So here's the obvious question. If having the resource wrecks the incentive structure, what happens to a country that never had one to lean on in the first place? Act 3, why the resource-poor countries won. Japan had no oil, South Korea had no oil. Switzerland and Singapore had nothing worth drilling for either. So the government in each of those countries had exactly one way to survive: get its own people working, producing, and earning enough to tax. There was no export terminal to fall back on, no oil field to fence off and guard. Just people and whatever they built. Think about it, that forces a government's hand in a way oil never does. If the only source of revenue is a productive population, then roads have to get built because goods need to move. Schools have to get built because a workforce that can't read can't run a factory floor. Courts have to work, and banking has to stay stable, because no business signs a contract in a country where the rules change on a whim. None of that came from good intentions. It came from necessity. Norway breaks the pattern in the most useful way possible, because Norway struck oil too. But Norway already had strong courts, clean institutions, and an accountable government running before the oil showed up. So when the money came in, it landed on a system built to handle it, and got funneled straight into a sovereign wealth fund instead of a handful of pockets. That's the real variable, not whether a country has oil, whether strong institutions existed before the oil did. And that variable is loading again right now, in the race for lithium, cobalt, and rare earth minerals. The countries mining them today are being watched to see which path they take, Nigeria's or Norway's. Wealth was never the deciding factor. What came first, strong institutions or the oil money? That's what decided everything. The resource curse was never really about oil sitting in the ground. It's about what happens to power the moment a government stops needing its own people. If you want more breakdowns of the hidden financial systems running under global headlines, subscribe and send this to someone who still thinks striking oil is the reason a country gets rich.